Today, and probably also the next day that we're together, we're going to be talking about how to build a computer. Now, of course, this isn't entirely what we've been learning about. We've been learning about how to code things, but I think it's a really good opportunity because I was already going to build this. I think it'd be fun to build this for you, explain what all the components are, put everything together, and clear some common misconceptions up at the same time. So we have most of the parts here. We don't have all of them. I do not have the graphics card today. I am going to be getting that tomorrow. I also have the case behind the camera. We don't need that for a long time, so that'll be near the end of the video or the next video, depending if I split it up. We do have the rest of the parts though. So probably one of the more polarizing things, the CPU. So when we think about a computer, the CPU does a lot of the work, a lot of the brain work for it. That can be split between the GPU and the CPU, so we can talk more about that later. The CPU is going to do a lot of the work though. It is very small, and there are two options when you're buying one. So it's just a little thin thing like this. So this is a Ryzen brand CPU by AMD. Ryzen is what I prefer. It's a little bit on the cheaper side. It does just as good of a job. Some people prefer Intel. Intel, a little more expensive for, in my opinion, no good reason. It's kind of like how some people prefer Apple versus Samsung or any other kind of phone. In the end, does it make a big difference? Not really. Some people just have preferences. In this case, I would say that this is probably more common because it's a lot cheaper. Okay, over here next we have the storage. So this is an M.2 storage, so very small. It's just the size of a stick of gum. Very, very small. Very good though. Much faster than traditional storage where you would use a hard drive. You know, hard drive is literally spinning a disk and laser writing and reading off of the disk. It takes a long time to spin the disk up and to get everything going, versus this is plugged directly into the board and everything works so much faster. Now, overall, I would expect most people to have these anymore because they're just about the same price. But some people do still use traditional hard drives. Solid state drives are a lot faster though, and so I do expect to see those more and more often. The M.2s are a little more pricey because they're smaller, they're faster, they're better, but the regular solid state drives also work just as well. But again, because of making them is getting cheaper, these are beginning to be about the same price as the older models. Couple things we have left. This is the RAM. So if we're considering the computer like a human, the CPU is the brain, the storage is our long-term memory, you know, those things you think about for a long time. The RAM is called volatile memory because if you shut the computer off while the memory is just in here, it doesn't get saved. On here it writes everything down. On here it temporarily writes it down. It's only in here for a short period of time before it gets transitioned either to trash or to long-term storage. The same way that your short-term memory works. When you're thinking and you're like, wow, why did I do that? Well, that's because it was in your short-term memory that you made that decision. You didn't remember why because it was short-term memory. You didn't need to think about it. Why did I drink that water? Well, because it was water and you were thirsty. You don't save that information every single day. You do save the important stuff like, what was the answer on that math test? Of course, you probably don't remember that either. But easy enough to kind of understand long-term and short-term memory. So the short-term memory, we want it to be fast because we want it to be in and out as fast as possible. The faster we have our short-term memory, the better our whole system operates, the faster the whole system operates. Now, you do want enough storage in your short-term memory because if you don't have enough storage in there, then you're backing up the line at the grocery store. You have more checkout lanes open, more people can get through faster. If you only have a few checkout lanes open with smaller checkout lanes, you're not going to go through very quick. These are, I would consider, fairly big. It totals up to about 32 gigabytes of RAM. That's plenty. I mean, I know people that get away with 8 gigs of RAM alone, or 16 gigs of RAM, and they're fine. Now we're getting up to some of the bigger things. So this here, our biggest thing, this is our CPU cooler. So whenever you're running the CPU, it's going to create heat. Anytime you do anything, it's gonna create heat. And this thing wants to keep the CPU from overheating, because if we overheat the CPU, we shorten the lifespan of the CPU breaks, and we have to buy a new one. Or it fries something else in the system because it's too hot. Everything's broken then. So if you're really working hard on this CPU, we're working really hard with this, then we're gonna need more out of our cooler. Now, this is probably one of the highest end coolers before you get to custom built water cooling. This is an all-in-one cooler. The other option they did ship with the CPU is an air cooler. Come on now. There we go. So with this, the fan spins and it cools off these aluminum fins that are around the outside. In the middle here, I'm not going to touch it because it's got the sticky stuff on it. The thermal paste is what it's called. We'll talk more about that later. But we don't want to touch it. So the fins here take the heat from the CPU and they distribute it out, and then the fan spins, pushing air past it, removing some of the heat through the air. Now, what is different about this bigger one, and normally these will do just fine. I really like the look of these, and I really just liked it, so I bought it. With these, what's happening is it's a radiator. So you take the radiator, and it's just like in a car, it's going to take the heat to the radiator. It's gonna have hot water in there, and then the air goes past the hot water in the radiator, removing the heat, and then the water goes back in a loop. Now the good thing about these is the water can't escape. You can't get rid of the water. It's all stuck in that system. If it gets too hot, then you have a problem, because then it's gonna start on fire. But if you can somehow manage to get this really nice stuff on fire, you're doing something real big. So, easy enough to use. All you have to do is put the fans on the radiator and then hook the radiator up to your CPU. Now this one's very nice because, as you can see right there, it's got a screen on part of it, so you can actually see what the temperature is at all times. This one, and so the RAM also, are RGB, so they'll change colors to however I want them to be. Whether that is going to be, I want it to be one solid color. If I wanted to go through a few different colors, maybe I wanted to change from red to purple to blue, and then somehow yellow back to red, something, I don't know. Or, hey, I want it to be, in this case, the box is purple. We'll figure that out when we get there. So, up next, we have the power supply. There are many brands that make many different power supplies. I went with Corsair because I've used them before, I trust them. Now, the power supply is what is powering the entire computer. So we don't just plug it in the wall and it magically works. We have to plug all the cables in from the wall to wherever they go. So like the CPU gets its own power. The cooler here, that's gonna get its own power. Everything's gonna have to be powered. This is what we're going to use to power everything. We're gonna take the energy from the wall, put it through the power supply, and then have it distribute everything out. So there are a couple of ways to buy these power supplies. One way is that you can buy non-modular. So modular means you can take it apart and put it back together as you like. So that would be, think about Legos. You could take Legos apart and put them back together. You could just use what you need. Modular is what we have. Non-modular just is cheaper. It's all the wires are there. It might look a little uglier, but it's all there and it'll all work the whole time. So with this one, a little bit on the more expensive side, because one thing, if you look down here, it's kind of small, but it says 80 plus gold. So when you're buying a power supply, that's one of the things you're gonna have to look at is what quality do you want? Because the higher quality, the less energy it uses from the wall. So if I plug in a really good power supply, it's not gonna use as much energy. It's not gonna waste as much energy through heat. So gold, not the best, but it's up there. You know, they have platinum. I want to say they have titanium. There's a score or diamond, maybe. I don't know. They have higher ones. Gold is kind of a standard. You can go lower. You can get silver, bronze, and you can just go with no color, just 80 plus. Those are where the really cheaper ones are. They're not necessarily the worst ones, but they're also not great. So this one is gold because I want to save a little bit of money on the electricity front. It is modular. Another thing we have to look at is how much electricity can this dish out, because if I have a really high-end CPU and a really high-end graphics card, let's pretend I'm holding the graphics card that I don't have right now. If I have those really high-end things, then we're not going to be able to power them with a really crappy one that has really low power. So this one has 650 watts. So 650 is enough for our case. I believe I was around 400, if I remember right, which gives me room in the future to upgrade. So let's say I only have 2 RAM right now, because that's true. I'm only gonna put 2 RAM in the future. If I buy 2 more RAM and I plug them in, if my power supply, if that overloads my power supply, if I was right at the limit of the power supply and now I'm over it, the computer won't even turn on anymore. Or it might turn on and then shut down if I try to do something. Not fun, so we don't want to do that. Now I'm gonna move over slightly because I'm running out of room over here. The last thing, and one of the more important things, is the motherboard. I'm sure some of you have heard of a motherboard before. Now, the motherboard itself is kind of like the body of the computer. The case is the shell around everything. This is what everything else plugs into. The power supply feeds through here to power almost everything. The graphics card is an exception. It will power the graphics card separately. But the CPU cooler, all will get plugged into this. And this will do all of the distribution of power. The RAM and the memory will both slot into here. So this one is made specifically for Ryzen AMD CPUs. It does make a difference. Do not just buy a random CPU and a random motherboard. They have to fit together. It's one of the more common early mistakes with any of these kind of things is you buy a bunch of parts, but then they don't fit together. Now, the reason that Ryzen and Intel CPUs are different, other than the small nitty-gritty details of how they work, but the big difference is with a Ryzen CPU, let me go ahead and grab mine out. You won't be able to see it, it's very small detail, physically small. This on the back side, the side that plugs into the motherboard, is a bunch of pins that go into a bunch of pads, is what it's called. So the pad will read information and feed information to the pins. Intel does it the exact opposite way. They have a bunch of pads on their CPU that get fed into a bunch of pins. So just a little bit different here and there. So easy enough to mix those up. So make sure you're paying attention when you do that kind of stuff, when you're buying anything. A great website to use is pcpartpicker.com. I think it's .com, it might be .net, either way. Another place to look, and this would also, because they partner with PC Part Picker, and this is where I got all of my supplies this time. Usually I try to buy from a couple places, but I was in a little bit of a rush to get all these parts, so I just bought them all from Newegg, which is spelled exactly like it sounds. New, N-E-W, egg, E-G-G.com. They're great about finding you your parts. They also will show the competition's prices. So if Newegg isn't the cheapest, they will say, hey, Amazon's got it for cheaper. Go to Amazon, they have it cheaper. Great, awesome, I saved $50. It's probably not gonna be much, it's probably gonna be a couple bucks. But great place to go for all of your stuff. So that is all the parts that I have with me other than the case. Now the case, I will quick go grab, but the case doesn't have many components to it. All right, let me move this out of the way. We can pull this box in, make myself some room to sit. So the case itself is just going to be holding everything. So it's gonna hold the radiator. Let's see, do you have a picture? Yeah, you kind of do. This one's easier to see. So the radiator is gonna be going on the front here. That's gonna be pulling air in to the radiator, the cold air from outside to cool down the radiator. And then the air inside the PC is going to blah, 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 do all of its fun stuff. So that is going to be where that goes. There are a couple of different things that you're gonna do here. So if we go back to this picture here, there is an opening on this side. That is where the motherboard goes in and hooks up to the back wall here. So there is a glass case that goes on the outside, or that is the metal one that goes on the back. This glass front goes on there so that we can see in and see our pretty components that we bought. Because why would you buy pretty components and then hide them behind a piece of plastic? It's not a good idea. So instead I got, I believe it's an acrylic. It might be tempered glass. I believe it's acrylic though. It does not say, oh, it does, tempered glass. So I got the better version. I didn't know I did. I thought I got the cheaper version. So tempered glass case face so that we can see in and see all our pretty colors. It does come with a couple of fans. It comes with some stuff that I'm not gonna need. So it comes with stuff for old style hard drives. I don't need those though, because I'm going to be hooking my storage directly into the motherboard. Overall, really, really simple because this is just the shell around everything. Everything else gets plugged in with the motherboard, which is behind me. Oh. This is where everything goes. And then this just fits in there to save us a little bit of space. So, I'm going to go ahead. How long have we been going roughly? We are getting close to 20 minutes now. I'm gonna go ahead and stop this portion of the video here. I still need to talk about the graphics card, but I will have to do that at a different time because I do not have the graphics card today. So this is it for right now. Next time we will work on the graphics card as well as starting to put everything together. Now I'm not gonna do that today, of course. I'm gonna be wearing a different shirt next time you see me because I need to get the graphics card from home and then bring it in. So what I need you to do now though is you're going to be taking a quiz over everything I just said. I know, no fun. I know you don't like quizzes, but you're gonna have to do some quizzes. So once you finish up the quizzes, then you can finish up class and you'll be going to 6th period. I don't know what day this video is being shown. I'm guessing it's either Wednesday or Thursday. I don't know. Could be Tuesday or Wednesday the next week. I'm not quite sure. But easy enough to solve all of this. Let's see. Did I forget anything other than the graphics card? We're going to briefly go over everything again. Good time to get out your quiz. So the case, it's a shell for everything to fit inside. There are going to be buttons and plugs for us to use on it, but overall it is a shell for everything else to fit in to keep everything clean and ordered. RAM is our short-term memory. Now, remember, this is RAM, storage, volatile memory. It is not the same as storage. It is our short-term memory that will get lost if we don't save it. So when you're writing on a Word document or Google Docs, now Google Docs is a little different. It will save automatically. But if you catch it in a time where it's offline, you can't save it then. And that would be volatile memory. If it disappears because you left, then that's volatile. We don't want to lose our information, so we want it to be fast. Next is our long-term storage. Our actual storage is what it's called. Now, this is an M.2. That is spelled exactly like that, an M.2. These really good, really fast. They do a great job. They're very small because they're M.2s. Now, if you wanted older storage, they'd be bigger. So a regular SSD is about the size of a credit card. A hard drive itself is about the size of a book. Not a great thing. You know, we got smaller and smaller as we went. There's a reason we went smaller and smaller, so we can save space for other components to get bigger. Okay? Our CPU, the brain of the computer. So this is what does the thinking. This is what makes sure everything works properly. Now, one thing you're going to want to be careful of, I'm going to be very careful with this, do not touch the pins. You grab it from the outside. You don't touch the face either. You grab it from the outside because we don't want to get our finger oils on the face, and we don't want to bend any of the pins. If we bend one of the pins, which are extremely small, I'll try to get a close up when I'm actually building it, but they're extremely small. And if we bend one of those, we have to bend it back. Otherwise, we have to buy a new one. And this is a couple $100. I think this was just about $200 by itself. So make sure that you don't mess it up. Now again, it came with a fan. We're not going to be using that fan. Oh, fit back in the box, you. Come on. Power supply supplies power to the computer. Power goes through here. There, we can open it. Modular means that the cables can come out and be plugged in as needed. This one's really needed because it's the plug that goes into the wall. But in this bag is all of our different cables. We're not going to need all of them because some of these are for that older style of storage that you plug in separately. You don't plug it directly into the motherboard. Last that we have here right now is the CPU cooler. So the cooler will keep the CPU cool because this will get up to boiling. This will get up to 200 degrees Fahrenheit if we don't put anything on it, and that will ruin our component. We don't want to ruin our component. We want to keep it good. So we're going to use this to keep it cool. The closer it is to freezing without getting to freezing, the better. Now, the reason we don't want to go below freezing is because there's moisture in the air surrounding us. That cold will get on the CPU, that cold air will go there and then the water will start to form around it. That's called condensation. Just like how every summer when you walk outside, the grass is wet from the dew. Why is that? Because there's water in the air that is settling to the cold ground. It's condensation forming. So this, if it gets too cold, will perform exactly the same thing. It'll get water on our electrical components because it's too cold. So we want it as close to freezing as possible. And trust me, that's not going to be an issue for this thing. Now, you might say, then why does it say 32 degrees on there? That's because generally, these are going to be recording in Celsius. It's a lot easier to understand because 100, bad. 0, bad. Anywhere above 0 and probably not too close to 100, good. So you want it cold. You want it about 32 degrees. Most of the time I see PCs run 40 to 50, 60 degrees Celsius, and great, that's awesome. And they've run perfectly fine at those temperatures. You know, sometimes they go a little hotter, especially if you have pets and their fur get into the filter of the radiator or the cooler that you're using, whatever cooler you are using. There are many brands that you can grab as well for these. This one is one of the higher end ones. I believe the only one that I would put above this would be Noctua, but we do not need Noctua fans. They are ugly. They work really well, but they're ugly. Another thing some people consider is the sound, how loud these are. So they're like, oh, it's so loud, I don't want to use it. Well, sometimes you don't want a super loud computer, and I would tend to agree usually. I don't want this to be the loudest thing in the room. I would rather be able to have headphones off whenever I'm using a computer if I'm not using anything specific. But overall, not too difficult of a task. Last but not least, I'm gonna move this over here. We have our motherboard. We're doing everything with this. This has every component attached to it. It is in control of everything. The CPU is the brain, this is the body. This is your arms and legs of the computer. This is what does all the work. So it is gonna have the brain hooked up to it. It's gonna have the storage. That's how those two communicate, is through this. It's how we power almost everything. It's how we use our RAM entirely. Because if you look on the, oops, there's no picture of it. There's a picture on this side. So if you look here, we can see where things get plugged in and all that fun stuff. This is also where you're gonna plug in stuff like, if we were using the integrated graphics of the CPU, the graphics card is built in the CPU. With more modern ones, a lot of the time that's the case. If you weren't using a graphics card, you could just plug your monitor directly into the motherboard. That's where a lot of people will plug in their mouse or their keyboard. I know my keyboard is plugged into this because I want that to be traveling very quickly to the source of information. So this is the body. This is what does almost all of the work. This does all the thinking. This remembers everything. Oh, there is a phone going off. This is what's going to connect two different parts together. The storage talks through this. The storage can't talk on its own. It goes through this into the brain. This is what gives everything power. And the case holds everything. Now, next time I'll be talking about graphic cards and I'll be putting everything together. So I hope you guys understood all of that and that you don't have any questions since I did it twice for you. All right, guys, we are now going to be building the computer. You've learned about what each of the components do with the computer. Now we need to learn what to do with these components. Now, when we open the motherboard box, that's what we're gonna start with, the motherboard box, because almost everything plugs into the motherboard.
part of it will plug the motherboard into the case, but almost everything goes into the motherboard. So, very important step. First, you take that out and you look around because there's more stuff in the box. Now, here we have a disk. This is a driver that we might need to install. We aren't going to have a DVD or a CD disk in the computer. We're going to use the internet for that later, but very useful to have. Here we have a little badge. This is just a sticker that you can put on your case or on your wall, your door, your notebook, your computer, your laptop, what have you. Don't put it on school laptops. But that's all that's there for. And then this will let you register your purchase with them. Now, I've not done it. I'm sure there's a reason to do it. And then here we have a couple of cables for some different things. Later on, we will see if we need it. I don't believe we need either of these for anything because I believe these are for the credit card style solid state drives. There's also a quick installation owner's manual for how to do everything. So it is going to go over the process of installing the CPU, the cooler, the RAM, the power supply, and how to install this in our case, as well as a couple of other small steps such as installing drivers and monitors, speakers, keyboards, the easy stuff. So for now, I'm gonna leave all this stuff inside. There's also some screws here, really easy to miss. Really tiny screws, so do not miss them, because if you need them, you're going to be sorry that they're missing, and we will need those screws. So, important thing when you're making a computer is to not electrocute the motherboard. There are a lot of small bits on here that if you just build up static shock on your hand and touch it, it'll break it. You'll have to buy a new one. Not good, because that will not be covered under warranty or under anything else. So instead, you take it out, and the bag that it is shipped in is going to be a special anti-static bag. So you take the bag, you put it on top of the box, and then you have access to everything. Now, I'm going to spin this so that it is right side up for me, and I will come grab the camera and show you what it looks like from the correct side. So this is what it looks like. You can see a couple of the different parts. So right here, you can see it says M.2. That's where our M.2 drive is going to be. Right there is our CPU. Right there will be our RAM. That's where we plug power in. Right here is where we are going to plug in our big boy graphics card. So there's a couple of other things on here that we will not need to mess with, but almost everything has very small labelings on it that we can use later. For now, I'm going to just flip this back around. Hopefully I get it in probably the same position so you can see me without the iPad falling over, please. All right. So we're going to start with the CPU, one of the more important parts. So there's a little lever arm on here that I'm sure if you back up the video, you can see that, or I'll probably show you again here in a second. I'll point it out. What we're going to do is we're going to remove the CPU from its container, and there is a correct direction to put this. So let me hold it up to the camera and I will show you. So if you look on the camera, if it'll focus for me, you can kind of see it there. You can see that gold corner. That is signifying the direction that that corner goes in on the board. That corner is also marked on the board. There we go. So now I will bring it back over again. I'm gonna leave it upside down to be fast about it. So right here's our little lever arm. You can see that. And that white circle on the corner, that is what lines up. So then I'm just gonna gently press that arm until it locks down under that little bit of plastic. Okay, now I'm gonna go back to recording. Here. All right. Looking good. So the CPU is installed almost entirely. We do need to add the cooler on top of this, but I'm not going to do that right now. Instead, I'm going to start installing the RAM. So you do need to make sure that the RAM is compatible with your motherboard. I did, but in your case, double check, because what happens is you'll buy older RAM or cheaper RAM, and then it will not be compatible with the motherboard. So this motherboard does accept what we are using. This is DDR4, so DDR4 3600. So that is clarifying the speed of the RAM, as well as a couple other things. So don't need that. I'm going to go ahead and remove this plastic cover. Some of the plastic cover did get damaged. I'm just inspecting to make sure it doesn't look like the RAM got damaged itself though. So I'm gonna flip it over. Again, a couple extra things. A sticker so we could put it on there if we want. I don't like putting stickers on my computer. I do see the use in it for in the future. If I was to tear my build apart and I didn't remember what it had in it, I could have the stickers on the back telling me what I all involved in my computer. So what I'm going to do first is remove one of the RAM. I'm going to take this sticker off because I don't like the look of it. Takes me a second. Oh, now, it did leave some residue. One thing you can use is isopropyl alcohol. That is safe to use on computer components if you let it dry before you start turning things on. I have heard of people using Goo Gone. I have not tried it myself, so I do not know if it works. And unfortunately, both stickers are being a pain in the butt. Another thing I could do is just rub on the sticker and just try to get the glue off like that. What I'm probably going to do is I'm probably going to pause the video for a second, walk around, pause the video, go find some isopropyl alcohol, because I'm sure I can find some somewhere, and just clean this up a little bit. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to see if this also will need that. It shouldn't, because it is covered by a shroud, but we're just going to double check. I'm glad that it's hard to get into some of these packages, because otherwise it'd fall out too easily. There we go. Yet again, so I'm going to set that down gently. This has some other stuff with it on what to do. So I'm going to put that in the motherboard box as well. I'm going to leave the sticker on, actually. I'm going to quick install the switch. Now, one thing I will need is a screwdriver. A small screwdriver, not a giant honking screwdriver. And I'm going to take off the cap that is covering the M.2. So this, I need to be very careful with these screws. So if I lose them, I'm not going to be happy with myself. Okay, so this lifts off. I'm going to set it gently there. And what's going to happen is, I'm going to have to bring it around again, but I'm going to plug it in like this and then push it down and screw this down on top. I'm also going to So this is a heat sink. What's gonna happen is there's a blue cover on here and underneath it's sticky. And it's going to stick to the storage so that it pulls the heat away from the storage if it's under a heavy load. My phone went off for a second, but I do not need what it is. So I am going to remove the sticker now because of that heat sink. I did not know it was there. Or I did not know that it was a heat sink. I suspected it was, but I was not sure. Now this sticker is coming off a lot better than the other ones. Come on now. I know this video is not as full of information as our last video was, but come now. There we go. I suspect it'll be a little more entertaining to actually watch the real thing. There we are. So I'm going to go ahead and plug it in. I heard a little click when I pushed it in far enough. Now I can leave it alone while I screw in. Remember earlier when I said there were some screws that we're going to need. Now is the time to use one of those screws. So I left them in the box, so I'm going to flip this up, put that to the side. I'm going to then, oops, there we are, put the box back. Now, I'm going to actually use the M.2 storage case that we got. This is a magnetic tipped screwdriver, so I can pick the screw up like that, and this will just help me not lose it. I don't need the He-Man strength to push that down. I just need to hold it down gently. It could break if I, oops, I lost one of the screws. Let me find it. There we are. Luckily it has a little bit of thread lock on there, so it was bright blue on the bottom. Okay, I have removed the heat sink protector. Not all PCs are going to have one of those. If the one you get does, great. If not, no worries. Again, we're not He-Man, we're not trying to crank this down as hard as we can. It is just snug. Snug is all we need, okay? So I've gotten that. I do have another M.2 storage on the front. So in the future, if I needed more storage, I could just buy another M.2 and slot it directly in, and I don't have to worry about anything else. I would just have to worry about which one gets the storage first. Okay, I've dealt with my storage now. I'm going to keep this because it's going to be my little tray for loose screws. This is going on later. That's going on later. I'm going to quick pause and go get some isopropyl alcohol. All right, as you can see on the table, I do have some of the isopropyl alcohol. So I'm going to very gently use it. There we are. I'm not going to put too much on. Let me move over so you can see a little bit better. I'm going to do just enough there to moisten it. I'm going to use the Q-tip to just try to scrub that sticker off. Now, the reason isopropyl alcohol is good, I'm also going to try to get some of the glue off. The reason isopropyl alcohol works and is better than water, for instance, is because water will stay and it will corrode. Isopropyl alcohol will dissolve and be gotten rid of very quickly. It's already drying. Now, I am gonna use my finger and just my nail and just try to scrape off that extra tape, which I wish they would have used the same sticker that the storage did. Oh, I got a little bit stuck in here. Can't leave that there. Oh shoot. Oh well. I'll get it out later. Off camera when I can use different tool. We'll go grab some tweezers. I don't actually, the screwdriver might work. Nope, just a little too big. I need some really small tweezers is what I need. Oh. There we go, quite a bit of the sticker came off there. Now, what I'm probably going to be doing in the end here is I'm going to take all of the sticker off of one. I'm going to start on the other. But then if I decide that we're running short on time, which not sure if we will, I will just leave the sticker on and I will take it off after fully building the computer. I'll just take the one RAM stick out and clean it up on my own. Now, make sure you guys aren't on your phones. You're paying attention. I know this part's boring. I know that you're not actively participating, so it's not as enjoyable for you. But you should be nice to Mr. Dayton and not make him yell at you for having your phones out. There we go. They could still use a bit of cleaning up with the Q-tip. Just to try to really get that glue off that they used. Overall, pretty good though. Came off better than I was expecting. I'm just gonna take my finger and try to rub some of the glue off using friction and heat. If I was to redo this, I would just leave the dang sticker on. It's not worth the effort that I'm putting into it. So, future me who, in the alternate universe where I didn't take the sticker off, would have been like, ah, I should have just taken the darn sticker off. So, the grass is always greener on the other side. And for those of you who then said you don't know what that means you always think it's better to do something when you don't actually know what it's like. There we are, just a little bit of isopropyl just to get some of the gunk off. Now, where you get isopropyl alcohol and cotton swabs are Walmart or a pharmacy. Of course, there's many places you could get it. I'm sure Fairway and Hy-Vee both have their fair share of, there we are. What do we have here? I got an email. Oh, getting close. Just a hair more. There we are. Switch cotton swabs before it gets too dry. There we are. Much more is coming off. Now, the reason I'm trying to clean these up so much, I'm sure you're wondering, is because these are pretty. They have pretty colors, and I want to look at them while they are in the case. I'd say I did a pretty good job. Now, when you're looking at the ramp, what I'm going to do quick is I'm going to turn the whole thing sideways. I'm going to move this out of my way. This is trash now. And just rotate this so I can look at these slots here. So first things first, these slide open. These do not. But these open and then they close once you press down. Now, one side is longer than the other. So if you look here, this side is shorter than this side. It is kind of hard to tell from distance, so I will bring you up closer. And you will see on the right side is slightly longer than the left side. Not too bad, but just enough to make a difference. So you don't want to put it in backwards. So what you're going to do, I'm going to start with slot number 1. I'm going to put it through the left side, then the right. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to gently press down. I heard a click on the left and a click on the right. That means I'm fully slotted in. Now, you do not want to fill in the slot that's right next to your ramp. You want to offset them. So you use 1, 3, or 2, 4. I'm going to do 1 and 3 because it doesn't really matter. I am going to try to clean this one up a bit first. Try to get some of the gunk off because, again, I want it to be pretty. It's a pretty thing. And I'm spending extra time to give myself a nicer product. Oh, you can probably peel a bit off. Oh, that came off. Nice chunk there. Now, are there better ways to do this? Probably. Are there more expensive ways to do this? Yes. This way is pretty cheap. I'm borrowing the isopropyl alcohol bottle, and I stole a few Q-tips from the same person so that I will not have to go buy a bunch of stuff. So usually if you ask nicely, somebody will say, yes, I have some isopropyl alcohol, and I most certainly do not need all of it. And they will let you borrow some. Now, I know, borrowing means you're going to give it back. Well, I'm borrowing the bottle, I'm giving the bottle back. This takes a bit of time, but trust me, it will be worth it. I'm hoping this will not split into 2 separate videos of just the assembly. I suppose, when did I start? I did start quite a bit ago, probably close to 15 minutes ago. But that also includes my time of going to get the isopropyl alcohol, so who knows how long the video is right now. Now, putting everything in the case is going to take quite a bit more time, because that's where it starts to get important. Because you don't want to miss a power cord and not have something be fully powered, because what's the point in having a graphics card if you don't plug it in? There isn't a point. Now, one thing with all of these components that I've added that you might have noticed is everything has a direction it has to go in. Now, there are some components that will not. Later on, we might be able to just, without specifying which ones, we can choose the orientation, whether it's going up and or down, left or right. You know, we can choose that stuff with some of them later. This is cleaning up nicely. Still got some glue on here though. A little bit of paper, I didn't notice that a second ago. There we go. A little bit there still. That's looking pretty darn good, if I do say so myself. So, like I said, I have done slot 1, so now I'm going to do slot 3, so they are not right next to each other. Oops, I'm doing it backwards. That would be a good idea to do correctly. So, gently press down. I heard a left click, and I heard a right click. Okay, so we should be good there. Looking great. Okay, so I'll bring you over, we'll take a peek at it. Okay, so as you can see, we have them in alternating slots. So we have slot 1, then here's 2 between them. We have slot 3, and then slot 4 is still empty. Now, you can buy motherboards that only have 2 slots. But if in the future you want to upgrade this computer, you would like to leave room for yourself to do that. I'm leaving myself some room so that later, if I need to, I can just pop it out, or I don't even have to pop these out, I can just pop 2 more in right beside it. And that will just make everything the same. Okay, so what do we got next? We could do that. I'm not going to do you next. Actually, yes I am. I'm going to go ahead and put on our GPU. Okay, so you can see there's a little slot, there's some slots here, there's a little metal bit here that's going out, and all of this here. That all is going to go towards the outside, which in my case is towards the camera, where this face is. Now, similar to the RAM, there's a little thing that'll pop up when I'm done, and I can press it down to open, and I just press it down in there. There's a little slot here and a big slot here. A lot easier to tell than the RAM. So there's a little bit there that I know I need to look at. Now I'm gonna rotate this here. I'm gonna push it off the left edge slightly because of this metal hook here. I don't want to try to press into the box. Now we gotta make sure we're straight with this. Good. Okay, it's looking good. Awesome. Now, one thing you might want to do while you're here is if there are some stickers that you don't like, take those off of the motherboard as well. So these don't tell me what it is, so I do not need them. Now, another thing you can do is later on, it will be asking stuff like, hey, where is this thing? And you can also go to the owner's manual that we had earlier that's in the box, I believe. There's the one owner's manual. Oh, it's in this box. That's where it is. And you can look through and you can find where is the fan for the CPU? Where do I plug that in at? Because there are special parts for that. Where do I plug in for a system fan? There's one there, there's a couple around as we go, and all sorts of different things like that. Let's see, PCIe slots. I'm in slot 1. It's good to be there. Just double checking, see if I forgot anything. So, one thing on the back here, you'll notice this here. Let me set it back up, right? Because the GPU is a little heavy. I might take this off even and re-put it on later after I put on the CPU fan. Now that I'm looking at it, it is a little bit smaller of a space than I was thinking it was. And so what's gonna happen is, this is how we're putting on the CPU fan. Now, it is defaulted to have a regular fan put on. We did not buy a regular fan for this project, and by we, I mean me, because we bought the big boy. So I'm gonna quick flip this around and get this out of the box for us. Now, this is the manual. It is a QR code. So later on, I will scan that if I need the manual for something. I'm gonna take it out of the box and look at this beautiful, beautiful thing. Here is what I was talking about. All right, yes, yes, yes. So here is the bracket for installation. Now, it does give us two separate brackets. It gives us a bracket for if we bought an Intel computer, and it gives us a bracket for if we bought a Ryzen computer, which is what we have. We have a Ryzen. Now, this is for Intel, so I won't be needing this, but I will keep them, because maybe in the future when I buy an Intel, I will need this. Okay. So it looks like I'll be needing this one, not the star or cross-shaped one, but the circle, because an AMD only part was in the bag with it. I am going to quick pull up the owner's manual on my phone, and I'm going to quick read it. And then I will come back to you.